Hello everyone, welcome to version 1.1 of my Uncharted 1 Brutal Difficulty walkthrough. This will cover chapters 20 through 22, which are the final chapters of this game. And chapter 20 is the harder chapter out of these three chapters. Mainly because it's the same kind of format as with chapter 13, where you have this big encounter in the courtyard, and then you have another encounter inside of the church. And for this courtyard encounter, you're going to be doing the exact same strategy that you did back in chapter 13, where you're just going to be sitting behind a pillar, and the AI will prioritize Sully, and you're just waiting for the right opportunity to shoot these guys when they're in cover, or when they're just preoccupied with Sully, but mainly when they're in cover, because one thing that I didn't really explain is that whenever the enemies are prioritizing your AI partner, and they are in cover, when you shoot them, they don't flinch. And it's interesting that it works this way because this actually makes shooting them a lot easier because you're not having to run the risk of them doing a very unfavorable flinch animation. Like that guy right there, if I was shooting him with my M92F and he was still in cover, he would not be flinching. It's a very strange system. I don't know how the programming on the flinches are superseded by the programming for the cover. But it's yet again another example of the very strange programming that Uncharted 1 clings on to. But what you're going to do right here is, after you clear out the first two enemies, you need to pick up the Dragon Sniper and the M92F, and you just need to hide behind this pillar right here. And you'll want to use the Dragon Sniper on the more dangerous enemies, like the M92F guys. And then you'll want to prioritize the M4 guys, and then you'll want to prioritize the shotgunners. There's no real preference displayed in this recording right here. I just kind of prioritized who was the closest threat to me, which is another option you can do. But, I mean, either way, the strategy's still the same, and you should have plenty of ammunition to do this. And obviously, if you've been inheriting your loot, you probably saved a couple of grenades from the previous chapters to use for this sequence here, just to speed it up. And as you'll see right here, the enemies are just busy prioritizing Sully, so the moment they go into cover, this is my chance to shoot them, and that was a waste of a shot from the Dragon Sniper. And the Dragon Sniper is a good weapon to have because it will instantly kill these enemies. And that guy, you saw just then, he was in cover. This guy's in cover as well, but he's not flinching. I don't know how it works this way, but it's very strange. But I've dealt with all of the enemies in the courtyard so far, aside from the grenade launcher guy right there and the sniper, but these enemies aren't a problem. Oh, and there's one more enemy right there, so yeah, I just need to get rid of the M4 guy, and these enemies aren't going to be a problem. Once these enemies are dead, we then have the church encounter, and the church encounter is the most annoying part of chapter 20 because it's just a waiting game most of the time. You're just spending a lot of time just waiting for the most vexing of enemy types to show up, and a lot of the times their behavior is very sporadic. You know, if you've done this encounter before, and you've expected the enemies to come at the exact same time, at the exact same position. Sometimes they can be a little late, other times they can be quicker than expected. That's what I mean when I say the behavior of the enemies is very sporadic. But we've killed those enemies, and now we're on the church encounter. So that speed up of the video just then, that was me waiting for the grenade launcher guys to turn up. This is where I'm going to use the shotgun to take out these guys, and you'll see right here, these enemies are prioritizing Sully, and the moment I come out of cover, that's when they decide to prioritize me. But they're still backing up towards me, which shows their omniscience. And look at that. Has this guy ever heard of the term danger close? I mean, who on earth would fire a grenade launcher at that range and risk getting hit themselves? I can't stand that about the grenade launcher guys on this game when they're closing in on you. And that's why you gotta get rid of them very quickly. But right around here, after you kill the second grenade launcher guy, there's normally an M4 guy very close to you, and he's busy prioritizing Sully, or sometimes there can be an M92F guy. But you'll notice, those enemies aren't here. It's just the sniper guys. Like, I don't know why the behavior is so sporadic here. It's so confusing. But this is why you gotta proceed with a bit of caution when you are trying to push the sequence into the next couple of phases. But I'm just going to use the M92F to deal with these snipers over here. And these snipers are not a problem whatsoever. There's normally a guy on the middle platform right there, but for some reason he's not showing up, so I'm gonna have to push the spawn to actually get him to come in. And there he is right there, although that's just the guy on the left, I believe. Yeah, so I don't know where that guy came from. So I'm just going to deal with him, and I'm going to deal with the middle guy, and then the rest of this is just going to be me waiting on the more annoying enemies, and then using my Dragon Sniper at a distance. So, given that this is all going to be pretty simple, I'm just going to go on a different tangent, and I'm going to talk about the Uncharted movie, which has to be one of the worst movies I have ever seen for a video game by far. Nothing about that movie was good. I mean, it started off kind of strong, and like Tom Holland, when he's playing the character of Nate and he's cracking those jokes, the jokes can be hilarious at times, but I mean, Victor Sullivan feels like the main character more so than Nate, because Victor Sullivan, it feels like he's the most capable character of the Uncharted movie compared to Nate. And I just feel like we get more moments where he just seems to be the one like coming up with all these brilliant ideas, and Nate's not doing any of that. And everything is just rushed out the door so quickly. Like the story just ends so quickly. The villains aren't built up very well. In fact, the guy you expected to be the main villain is just killed off, and he's replaced by that female woman, and she's hardly on screen, and she doesn't have the same level of prominence as Nadine Ross from Uncharted 4. And then you have the treasure, and the treasure is the most boring thing you could ever imagine. At least they made Avery's treasure stand out with the amount of set pieces you were put into. But it's just a typical pirate treasure, and there's no sort of like middle area that the characters have to explore. And then you have characters like Chloe Frazer not getting any spotlight, and she's actually one of the villains in this case. And like Nate leaves her behind because he knows he'll betray her, and Chloe shows up on one final scene in like the final part of the movie, and she's like, oh man, and that's it. You just never see them again, and then the fight choreography just isn't that spectacular. Nothing about it really stands out, and like the whole moment where you have this aerial battle where the helicopters are pulling the ships up, it's just there for the sake of novelty and not because it's actually that epic. That's just really what I'll say. And then Sam Drake is just introduced in the beginning, and you never see him again up until like the post-credits scene. And they're acting like there's going to be a sequel to this, but I highly doubt there is going to be a sequel to the Uncharted movie. There's no possible way. If that movie is as bad as it is, I don't see them ever making a sequel. Why would they need to do that? I don't understand. Like, Uncharted 1 has its problems, but it's more interesting than the Uncharted movie. That's what I'll say. And Uncharted 4 is miles better than the Uncharted movie. And Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3, miles better than the Uncharted movie. Like, that movie is an absolute disgrace to the Uncharted series. It's disappointing. Do not watch that movie. I really recommend you do not watch that movie. It is really bad. It is just a throwaway movie that has so many rushed concepts. The characters aren't built up very well. Just the treasure is so boring. The set pieces feel so laid back and nowhere near as interesting as the set pieces from Uncharted 4, which is the most laid back Uncharted game ever, but it actually served that game very well. And then the emotional moments of the film don't have any payoff, and how are we meant to feel anything? It's like when Victor reveals to Nate that he lied to him about Sam. Like, I didn't feel anything when that moment happened. I'm just like, why is this introduced now? Why not like later on in the film? Like that film gets so much wrong. It's hard to explain how much the Uncharted movie was just a massive disappointment of a film. And it's rendered even more insignificant when you realize that the film isn't canon to the Uncharted series. Everything that happens in that movie is not canon. So what is the whole point of even being invested in it if it's not canon? It's like with the Resident Evil live-action movies. Why on earth would you ever be invested in that shitty live-action series that's not even canon? And all it does is just ruin the original characters, and it turns everything into fantasy, and all the villains are just laughable, when I could be invested in the animated CGI films, which actually are canon to the storyline of Resident Evil, and they actually do Resident Evil justice. Like, those are the best video game films I have ever seen for a video game ever. And if Resident Evil can pay respect to the video game series, why can't the Uncharted movie? Just don't waste your time with that film. It's such a bad film. It's very insulting to the Uncharted series, and it's just a cash grab. That's all I'll say about that. But we have done chapters 20 and 21. Those are very simple. And now we have this boss fight against Navarro. So all this fight is just 3 phases of you killing enemies. So when you eliminate the enemies, Navarro will run away. You can't kill Navarro, unfortunately. You have to wait until the final part of the sequence to actually be able to kill him. And blind fire on the shotgun is very helpful for the first phase and the third phase. This is the second phase. So I'm just going to use the third-person cover trick to my advantage in order to deal with the enemies, and they do not stand a chance against this. And after you kill 2 enemies on this phase, these enemies will spawn in. So I'm just going to use the M4 to my advantage, and I will be able to use the third-person cover trick and finish this phase very quickly. Very simple. And once Navarro runs away, you'll want to swap to the shotgun and take the shotgun into the third phase. For the third phase, this is another bullshit part to brutal difficulty because there's a sequence where you have to dodge a bunch of crates that are falling. And during the animation of rolling, you can be shot. But I actually found a way to bypass this issue, and it's all dependent upon where Nate is when you hear the grenade launcher sound and the event triggers where you need to press circle to dodge. So what you'll need to do is, before you even think about going into the third phase, you gotta move slowly towards that trigger that triggers the quick time event. And I'll demonstrate it in a moment. So I pick up the shotgun. This is where you gotta move slowly. I'm gonna aim, and I'm just going to stay right near this wall, because I think what happens is the initial position of Nate before the crates actually fall on him, that is where the game registers his position, and that is where the enemies are shooting at. So this gives you a bit of time to actually get behind these crates before you die, and this works very consistently. The only reason I died is because I messed up this fight right here. If you are thinking about taking the shotgun into this phase right here, you've got to be very smart with your shots. And this grenade launcher guy is random. Sometimes he will aim for the crate, and he'll destroy it, and then he'll time it just right, where Navarro's last shot will kill you quickly. And that right there can be very unfortunate with the grenade launcher guy. But once you get to this part right here, it's so simple, because all you gotta do is just move from cover to cover, and Navarro will never get the chance to take you out. And you just gotta do a bunch of quick time events on him, and the game will be over. And with this recording, this is effectively the end of version 1.1 of my Uncharted 1 brutal difficulty walkthrough. I will be covering Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3 and Uncharted 4 on their highest difficulties, so stay tuned for those games. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.